I arrived at the restaurant believing this evening would finally bring calm back into my life. My wife had insisted we needed time together, away from work and responsibilities, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to hope she meant it. The valet took my keys with a polite smile. The warm lighting at the entrance welcomed me, and I walked in thinking I was about to save my marriage. I had no idea I was walking into a perfectly staged ambush. When I stepped inside, I searched for her with a mixture of relief and anticipation. I saw her near the window, but she wasn't alone. Beside her sat a man whose presence felt oversized, as if he believed the room belonged to him. His shoulders stretched his shirt, his smirk was fixed in place, and his hand rested on the back of her chair like a mark of ownership. My heart froze. This was not a surprise guest. This was a message. I approached the table slowly, refusing to jump to conclusions. I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation, but every detail killed the possibility. 2 plates, 2 glasses already filled, a napkin folded for only 2. She saw me, smiled without warmth, and introduced the man with a tone I had never heard from her before. She said he understands how real men behave. The words didn't slap me. They sank into me like poison. The room reacted before I did. A couple at the next table stopped eating. A waiter hesitated mid-step. The air felt heavier, as if everyone sensed they were watching something they shouldn't. My wife laughed in a way that didn't sound like her, a rehearsed laugh that belonged to someone desperate for attention. Her companion leaned back, enjoying every moment of my confusion, as if my discomfort proved something he needed to believe about himself. It was then I understood. I wasn't invited here for reconciliation. I was the evening's entertainment. This man wasn't just someone she admired. He was her chosen instrument. They wanted a scene. They wanted me to crumble, to plead, to become small so they could feel large. The humiliation was public by design. The betrayal was not emotional. It was theatrical. My chest tightened, but I did not react. Instead of exploding, I sat down calmly, ignoring the glass she expected me to grab. She looked momentarily unsettled, as if she had rehearsed every possible response except quiet. Her lover tried to provoke me with boasts about his achievements, his influence, his world. Each brag was delivered with the arrogance of someone who mistakes volume for value. My wife encouraged him, nodding eagerly, hoping I would break. I stayed silent, but inside, something shifted. It wasn't fear. It wasn't jealousy. It was the realization that the woman sitting in front of me no longer saw me as a partner. She needed an audience more than a husband. I was not facing a loss. I was witnessing an escape. The man she admired represented noise and muscle. She mistook chaos for strength and thought cruelty made her powerful. She believed she was trading up. She didn't understand that real strength doesn't perform. It transforms. While they laughed, something in me hardened into clarity. I did not feel destroyed. I felt awakened. Pain has a way of revealing truths you avoid, and in that moment, I saw who she really was and who I no longer needed to be. I smiled once, not because anything was funny, but because the page had turned. They thought they were ending my story that night. Instead, they handed me my beginning. The moment I sat down at that table, I realized I was not a guest. I was a prop. Her new companion treated me as if I were a decoration placed beside the cutlery, something to be tolerated rather than acknowledged. He leaned toward her while speaking, never bothering to look at me directly, as though I did not possess a voice or presence worth considering. Every sentence he uttered was followed by a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because he enjoyed the performance of superiority. He interrupted me before I could finish a single thought. No question directed at me was allowed to reach an end. If I attempted to speak, he spoke louder. If I looked at my wife, he tilted his head toward her with a triumphant smirk, as if claiming a trophy. At one point, he tapped my shoulder with the familiarity someone might use with a pet that has overstepped its place. The gesture was small, but it revealed everything about how he saw me. My wife watched every moment with bright eyes, completely absorbed by the spectacle. It was clear she believed she had found something better. The man beside her radiated confidence, or what she interpreted as power. He laughed at his own jokes, flexed his arms when he lifted his glass, and spoke of his successes with the enthusiasm of a street vendor advertising a miracle cure. She mistook noise for authority. She mistook arrogance for leadership. She mistook volume for strength. I noticed the way she leaned toward him when he spoke. Her posture betrayed admiration. She wanted the world to see her sitting next to someone who dominated the room. She thought she was trading stability for excitement, reflection for intensity, partnership for ego. While she showcased her attraction to this man, she never considered what it meant that he needed witnesses to feel powerful. A man who is truly strong does not require applause. He began recounting achievements that seemed tailored for effect rather than truth. According to him, he could close deals without negotiation. He claimed he never failed at anything because he was built differently from ordinary men. Each story was more exaggerated than the last. I watched him talk and could not help noticing how desperately he needed admiration. He was not alpha. He was merely loud. My wife looked at me occasionally, waiting for a reaction. She wanted jealousy to justify her choices. She wanted an argument so she could claim she had outgrown me. I refused to play along. My silence confused her. She mistook it for fear, but she never understood that silence is where strategy begins. I listened carefully, not because his words impressed me, but because every boast revealed something useful. The more he spoke, the more careless he became. He gave away details about his business, his connections, even the type of clients he dealt with. He bragged about shortcuts, favors, and deals that skirted the line of legality. He thought I was ignoring him, yet I was memorizing every piece of information he dropped so casually. My wife did not see me observing. She saw only what she wanted to see, a man who appeared defeated. In truth, I was studying them both. She believed she was upgrading her life. He believed he had conquered another man. Neither noticed the shift occurring inside me. I was not hurt anymore. I was awake. While they entertained themselves with my alleged humiliation, I prepared for something they were incapable of imagining. The man she chose over me never understood that power is not measured by noise. It is measured by what you can build in silence. That night, while he laughed and she admired him, I stopped being the man they thought I was. I began becoming the man they could never see coming. When I left the restaurant that night, I did not stagger. I did not cry. I did not replay their laughter in my head. Instead, I walked to my car with a calmness that surprised even me. Something essential had shifted. Their plan was simple. They wanted me to crumble. They expected humiliation to crush my confidence. They never imagined humiliation could become fuel. I sat in my car for a long moment, not as a destroyed husband, but as a man who had just been handed a blueprint. They thought I was weak because I did not shout. They mistook restraint for surrender. They forgot silence is not absence. Silence is preparation. I drove home without turning on the radio. My thoughts were louder than any melody. The next morning, I began documenting everything. I searched through messages she never bothered to delete. Her arrogance became my advantage. She believed secrecy was unnecessary because she assumed I would never look. I found conversations that revealed the timeline of their affair. Pictures that confirmed where they met. Reservations paid with a card we both knew she was not supposed to use. I saved every detail without emotion. I moved to financial records next. I reviewed our accounts, investments, and joint assets. I knew that everything she did carried traces she was too careless to hide. She had forgotten the most basic truth. Nothing disappears when people believe they are safe. I discovered transactions linked to her lover. Small at first, then larger, revealing a pattern she never intended me to understand. I started investigating him as well. I did not confront him. I did not warn her. I went to the places he claimed he owned. I checked his stated achievements. The more I looked, the more cracks I found. He liked to call himself a self-made man, yet his companies had lawsuits pending. Partners accused him of unpaid debts. Clients reported unfinished work. The muscular confidence he displayed in public was a facade hiding rotting foundations. I printed documents, saved screenshots, and created a timeline. It felt less like revenge and more like research. The truth did not hurt me. It strengthened me. Every piece of evidence became a brick in a wall that separated who I was from who I was becoming. The man they thought they humiliated did not disappear. He evolved. My wife remained oblivious. She believed my silence meant defeat. She walked around the house with the casual triumph of someone convinced the game was won. She did not notice that I had stopped reacting to her provocations. She did not understand that emotional engagement is a currency, and I had decided to stop spending. Her lover continued bragging online, unaware that every post he shared became a note in my archive. I learned about his other affairs, his hidden accounts, and the people he owed money to. I did not need to fabricate anything. The truth was already damning. All it required was attention, and attention was something I had in abundance. I realized something profound during this transition. Revenge is not an act. Revenge is architecture. It requires patience, precision, and the ability to see beyond the moment. They assumed I would break. They assumed humiliation would erase my identity. Instead, it erased my hesitation. Their mistake was not betraying me. Their mistake was believing I would stay the same man after they did. By the time I finished gathering information, I no longer needed them to acknowledge what they had done. They had created a storm without realizing I was learning how to control lightning. The days following my discoveries were surprisingly calm. I did not confront her. I did not question her whereabouts. I simply stopped participating in the script she expected me to follow. My silence became my first act of resistance. She came home late, waiting for accusations, waiting for anger, waiting for the emotional turmoil that usually accompanies betrayal. Instead, I nodded, said nothing, and went to bed. The absence of reaction unsettled her more than any argument could have. I no longer asked who she was going out with or why she smelled of a perfume I did not buy. I did not react when she left her phone face down or returned with a smile she never offered me. She mistook my calmness for weakness, convinced I had finally accepted my place in the new hierarchy she imagined for her life. What she did not know was that silence can be sharper than confrontation. I had decided my energy was no longer hers to provoke. I began investing my time in myself. I woke up earlier, exercised, and paid attention to how I dressed. My clothes fit differently. My posture straightened. When I saw my reflection, I no longer saw a man waiting for validation. I saw a man preparing for a future larger than the one she had chosen to abandon. She noticed the changes, but instead of asking questions, she convinced herself I was trying to win her back. That illusion comforted her. Friends started noticing the shift as well. They wondered why I looked healthier and calmer. They asked if I'd started a new project or if something good had happened. I answered with a smile and nothing more. Curiosity began circling around me like a quiet storm. People are unsettled when someone who should be broken begins to glow instead. You could see it in their eyes. They were waiting for an explanation I had no intention of giving. Even her lover sensed something. When I ran into him unexpectedly, he greeted me with the smug tone he believed justified his existence. I responded with a calm hello that left him confused. He expected anger or submission. He was not prepared for indifference. Men like him feed on reactions. When denied that nourishment, they grow restless. My silence became an unpredictable language he could not interpret. I stopped checking her messages and monitoring her lies. I already had what I needed. I watched her confusion grow each time she tried to provoke a response and received none. She would leave the house with exaggerated gestures, waiting for jealousy to surface. It never came. She began questioning herself without realizing that the battlefield had shifted. The war was no longer emotional. It was strategic. I changed my eating habits and started going places I had always postponed visiting. Not because I wanted to distract myself, but because I was rebuilding the foundation of my identity. I became a man who did not need applause or companionship to feel complete. My silence created distance, and in that space I grew. One evening, she asked if everything was all right. I smiled and said everything was perfect. That answer frightened her more than any accusation could have. She was losing control without understanding how. Silence had become my ally. It was not defeat. It was preparation. The trap was almost ready. All that remained was the moment they would discover it existed. The family gathering took place at her parents' house, a setting that always felt like a courtroom where I was the defendant. Everyone knew about her lover by then. They treated him like a prize she had won, a new chapter in her life that allegedly proved she had made the right choice. He stood beside her with the arrogance of someone who believed he had conquered another man simply by existing. I walked in with the same calm I had been nurturing for weeks. The moment I entered the room, conversations paused. People watched me as if expecting a spectacle. They wanted to see humiliation dance on my face. They wanted confirmation that I was still broken. I offered none. I greeted everyone without hesitation, shook hands, and took a seat. My posture carried a confidence I no longer needed to fake. The atmosphere shifted without a word spoken. Her lover approached me with a smile that felt rehearsed. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear, asking how it felt to watch a real man take my place. The room chuckled, waiting for my collapse. I looked at him and replied with calm sincerity that I was happy he believed in himself, because someone needed to. The room went silent. They expected rage. They expected pleading. They received composure. He tried again, mocking my clothes, career, and even the way I stood. Instead of reacting, I asked him how his latest business project was going. He bragged, unaware that every detail he shared contradicted the documents I had collected. When he exaggerated his success, I mentioned specific lawsuits and unpaid bills, speaking with the neutral tone of someone reading a weather forecast. Gasps filled the room. For the first time, he blinked. I did not insult him. I did not raise my voice. I simply placed truth on the table. His posture changed. His chest, once inflated, seemed to lose air. The confidence faded from his smile. He looked around for support, but the same people who laughed earlier were now studying him carefully, reconsidering their allegiance. My wife stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Her eyes widened with confusion. She had prepared for an emotional man, not a composed strategist. She expected a heart, not a mind. She wanted drama, not precision. Every word I spoke carried weight, because it was not spoken to win. It was spoken because it was true. Her lover tried to regain control by dismissing my statements as rumors, but the calmness in my tone made his denial sound frantic. He looked like a man caught without preparation. I did not invade his space or challenge him physically. I simply watched him crumble under facts he never thought anyone would gather. The room changed sides without realizing it. Respect returned to me like a tide that had always been waiting for the right moon. People stopped addressing him with admiration and started whispering doubts. My silence had matured into authority. The humiliation they planned for me returned to its cinder without me lifting a finger. My wife excused herself, overwhelmed by what she witnessed. She walked away with the slow steps of someone whose world was no longer aligned with her expectations. Her lover followed her, no longer confident, looking smaller than he had ever appeared. I remained seated, drinking water, unbothered, unshaken. For the first time, they understood something they should have known from the beginning. Power does not shout. Power waits. And that day, it arrived with my name on it. After the family gathering, I no longer needed to raise my voice or chase anyone. I had something far more powerful than anger. I had truth, and truth does not negotiate. It waits for the right audience. I began sharing what I had discovered, not through gossip, but through carefully chosen conversations with the very people who kept her lover's world standing. I did not target him directly. I targeted the pillars that held his illusion in place. His closest friends were the first to learn about his debts. I simply asked them if they were aware he owed money to half the people who trusted him with their investments. I showed them documents I'd found, proof of loans disguised as partnerships, businesses that existed only on paper, and clients who never received what they paid for. They listened with growing unease, each revelation chiseling away at the image they admired. Confidence evaporates quickly when admiration becomes embarrassment. I visited one of his business associates under the pretext of a friendly chat. I asked him if he ever wondered why the profits never matched the promises. Then I placed copies of unpaid invoices on the table. The man stared at the numbers in silence, realizing he was financing a fantasy. Shock replaced loyalty. Anger replaced admiration. The domino had been pushed. I did not insult anyone. I did not accuse anyone. I presented facts with patience and a calm tone. Each document spoke louder than any confrontation could. The silence that followed every conversation was more satisfying than any outburst. Slowly, his reputation began cracking in places he never expected. The people who once praised him now questioned his integrity. They began separating themselves from him, not out of fear, but out of self-preservation. I knew he would try to deny everything. That was part of his nature. But denial has no value when proof circulates among those whose approval he needs most. His loud confidence began shrinking. He stopped bragging online. He avoided certain people he once greeted with pride. Social gatherings where he was once the center of attention now felt hostile. People watched him differently. Some looked disappointed. Others looked entertained. None looked impressed. My wife noticed the change before he did. She asked why everyone seemed distant lately, why invitations suddenly stopped, why her lovers seemed frustrated after every phone call. She assumed the world was jealous of him. She never imagined the world was finally seeing him. She believed power came from muscles and attention. She never understood that power collapses when truth appears. The most devastating blow came from his accountant. A brief meeting and a polite question about unpaid taxes unleashed a wave of panic he could not contain. His face lost color. His voice trembled. He could not hide what was now obvious. Numbers do not lie. Receipts do not disappear. Systems do not forget. I watched from a distance as his image dissolved. He had built his identity on admiration. Without it, he was naked. Without applause, he was irrelevant. Humiliation did not arrive loudly. It arrived quietly, like a reflection in a mirror he could not avoid. The same people who once believed he was superior now avoided him. They saw him for who he was, not for who he pretended to be. His arrogance had no audience. His confidence had no foundation. The world he tried to conquer now looked at him with pity. I did not destroy him. He handed me the tools. All I did was remove the curtain. Her world began unraveling the morning she opened the letter from the bank. She stood at the kitchen counter, still convinced she was in control, still believing her choices came without consequences. I watched her expression shift from boredom to confusion and then to a panic she could not hide. She read each line slowly, her fingers trembling as reality replaced fantasy. Nothing catastrophic happened. She simply discovered the truth she had ignored for years. When our marriage was still strong, she signed documents she never bothered to read. She trusted me then. She believed my suggestions were harmless, details meant for a future she assumed she would enjoy beside me. At that time, she enjoyed being cared for. She smiled when I handled the paperwork. She felt important when I told her she did not need to worry about anything. She wanted the benefits of commitment without its responsibilities. Now, she learned the cost of negligence. The assets she believed belonged to her were legally mine. The house she flaunted as proof of her new independence had my signature on every foundation. The businesses she referenced in her arguments were registered under my name. The accounts she thought she could rely on were controlled by the person she tried to publicly diminish. She did not lose anything. She signed it away voluntarily. I did not steal what she claimed as hers. She gave it, believing I would always remain the man she once respected. She assumed love was permanent, so documents were irrelevant. She forgot that signatures do not fade when feelings do. She forgot that decisions made during trust become instruments during betrayal. She forgot that I paid attention even when she wanted applause for ignoring me. She confronted me with wide eyes, demanding answers she already feared. Her voice rose with frustration, yet I remained calm. I explained that everything was done legally. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was manipulated. It was all written in agreements she endorsed willingly. She insisted she never intended to give me so much control. I reminded her that intentions do not change contracts. Her silence afterward felt heavier than her arrogance ever did. Calls followed. She contacted her family, hoping for outrage on her behalf. Instead, they responded with disbelief. They had celebrated her new relationship, believing she upgraded her life. Now they watched her stand in a house she no longer owned, facing consequences she never anticipated. Her lover tried to support her, but his own troubles left him powerless. His words held no weight against documents that bore her signature. She searched for a loophole. There was none. She sought sympathy. It did not arrive. She tried to blame me. The law denied her. The empire she thought she controlled was built with bricks she never inspected. She had mistaken comfort for power. She had mistaken attention for security. She had mistaken her ignorance for freedom. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply lived my life as a man who understood value. She realized too late that the humiliation she attempted in public had become the foundation of her private downfall. She tried to display superiority. She handed me ownership instead. She once believed she stood on a stage she constructed. Now, she understood the stage had my name carved beneath every board. And there is no applause for someone who performed without reading the script. The night she came back was quiet, almost too quiet for what she expected to accomplish. I heard the knock and recognized the rhythm immediately. There was hesitation in it, as if she no longer knew whether she was welcome. I opened the door slowly, not out of curiosity, but because I no longer live in a world where her arrival dictated my pulse. She stood there with eyes swollen from crying and shoulders hunched in defeat. The confidence she once wore like a crown had vanished. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and looked around as if she were entering a stranger's home. In a way, she was. The furniture had not changed, but the atmosphere had. Silence no longer belonged to someone afraid to speak. It belonged to someone who no longer needed to. She tried to speak, yet her voice trembled, unsure of itself. She reached for memories that once meant something, but discovered they no longer held value. Her first tear fell before she completed her sentence. She wanted forgiveness. She wanted things to rewind. She wanted the man she once believed she could dismiss. I listened, not because I cared, but because I allowed her to finish something she thought she controlled. Her words poured out like rain hitting a roof. They made noise, but changed nothing. I did not interrupt. I did not comfort her. I simply observed. She began recounting regrets, describing the admiration she once felt for a man who never deserved it. She admitted she mistook arrogance for strength. She confessed that attention had blinded her to value. I watched her struggle with realizations she was not prepared to face. The world she thought she understood was gone, and she did not know how to navigate the one she had entered. Her lover had disappeared without explanation. Friends who encouraged her choices now avoided her. She had discovered that admiration is conditional, and she no longer met the conditions. She expected me to feel satisfaction, but I felt nothing. She asked why I did not look angry. I told her anger was a debt she no longer qualified for. My peace was not a performance. It was a result. She tried to reach for my hand, expecting habit to guide me. It did not. The man she remembered had been dismantled piece by piece. In his place stood someone she could not manipulate. She begged me to speak. I finally did. I told her she miscalculated. She believed she damaged a timid husband. In truth, she sharpened a strategist. Her face changed. It was not sadness. It was realization. She finally understood that her actions did not break me. They revealed me. She wanted to return to the man she once controlled. Not knowing that man never returned from the night she tried to humiliate him. The silence she feared was not emptiness. It was strength she could not match. She cried harder, asking for one more chance. She promised change. She claimed she learned. I listened politely, the same way one listens to rain falling on a surface that can no longer absorb water. Tears that once carried influence now held no weight. Emotion without value becomes noise, and noise does not move mountains. When she left that night, she walked out differently from how she entered. She came believing history could be rewritten. She left understanding history had already judged her. She did not lose a partner. She lost someone she underestimated. And that was the one truth she could not outrun. She returned a week later, not with tears this time, but with a rehearsed calmness she hoped would persuade me. She believed clarity would soften me. She believed logic would win where emotion failed. She sat across from me and spoke about rebuilding, about lessons learned, about a future she claimed we could still have. Her words carried desperation dressed as serenity. I allowed her to speak until she exhausted every argument she came prepared with. When she finished, she waited for me to validate her hope. Her eyes searched for signs of surrender. I gave her none. Instead, I offered her the one thing she never expected to receive. I offered her freedom. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation she had faced. She blinked as if she misheard, convinced there was a hidden threat in my tone. I reassured her there was none. This was not a punishment. It was a conclusion. She asked what that meant. I explained that love is not a prison, and I had no interest in holding anyone hostage. She had spent months chasing a version of herself she thought existed in someone else's admiration. She was welcome to continue that pursuit if she believed it held value. She could walk away without justification. No fights, no conditions, no apologies. Freedom. Her composure cracked. She looked confused, almost offended. She expected me to cling. She believed my identity depended on her presence. She asked if I was throwing away our past. I told her our past ended the night. She chose humiliation as a weapon. What remained was a choice. She could stay and rebuild herself on her own terms, or walk away and chase whatever she believed she missed. She asked if I wanted her back. I told her wanting someone who abandoned her own values was no longer a desire I recognized. She asked if another woman had replaced her. I replied that no one replaced her. I replaced myself. The man she betrayed did not survive her choices. The man speaking to her was someone she created without intending to. Her voice rose, demanding clarity. I remained calm. Revenge is not loud. Revenge is the absence of need. I told her she could choose any road she wished, but none led back to the version of me she remembered. That man was gone. She could not resurrect him, negotiate with him, or manipulate him. She tried to understand how I became someone she could not reach. I told her pain is a sculptor and humiliation is a tutor. She tried to squeeze one last plea into the space between us. She wanted certainty. She wanted a promise. I offered none. I let her sit with the realization that the power she once held evaporated, not because I took it, but because she abandoned it. Eventually she stood, unsure where to go. She lingered at the door, hoping for a gesture she could interpret as attachment. I remained seated. She left quietly, carrying a truth she never predicted. Losing love is painful. Losing access to someone who outgrew you is devastating. She asked for another chance. I gave her something greater. I gave her the one gift she was never prepared to receive. A life without me in it. My transformation did not happen overnight. It began quietly, without any declarations. I stopped living through reaction and started acting with intention. What she considered the end of my worth became the beginning of my identity. People who once overlooked me began to notice changes they could not explain. I spoke less, but my words gained weight. I moved differently, not as someone recovering from betrayal, but as someone sculpted by it. My career responded first. Projects that once seemed distant became opportunities one could reach. My confidence was no longer borrowed from approval. It came from clarity. Meetings that used to drain me became arenas where my preparation stood out. My ideas were no longer ignored. They were requested. I felt an abundance of direction, not because destiny favored me, but because I stopped waiting for validation to push me forward. Friends who once doubted my ambitions now sought my perspective. They asked how I remained calm in the face of personal chaos. I told them that storms do not destroy strong roots. They reveal them. They began inviting me to events, not out of pity, but out of respect. My presence shifted rooms. People listened before I spoke because silence had become my resume. I realized something profound during this growth. Strength is not measured by volume. It is measured by stillness. The man I used to be believed love and loyalty were guarantees. The man I became understood their choices. I no longer feared losing people. I feared losing myself. Every decision I made aligned with who I wanted to be rather than who others wanted me to remain. My habit changed. I read more, listened more, watched more. I learned that wisdom does not scream. It whispers. I surrounded myself with people who valued integrity, not performance. I did not seek admiration. I attracted it. My wardrobe changed not to impress, but because I valued how I felt in my own skin. I ate differently, slept differently, and communicated differently. My silence, once mistaken for weakness, became the language of self-mastery. Women who once overlooked me now noticed me. They saw a man who moved with intention. They recognized the depth that comes from surviving betrayal without becoming bitter. I did not rush into relationships. I was no longer searching for completion. I was building companionship from overflow, not deficit. People understood that I was not running from my past. I had digested it. The irony was impossible to ignore. She wanted me to see her new partner as the model of strength. She wanted me to mimic a man defined by noise. Instead, she taught me the opposite. Her attempt at humiliation became my education. The man she abandoned became a man she could no longer approach. The version of me she tried to break became the version that outgrew her imagination. My success did not come from revenge. It came from evolution. I stopped seeking to prove her wrong. I focused on proving myself right. The world responded accordingly. Every step I took reminded me that sometimes the universe reshapes us through people who never intended to help. I did not become alpha by force. I became immovable by purpose. The man she thought she defeated ceased to exist. The man who emerged could not be compared to what he once was. I did not win her back. I won myself. That was the victory she never anticipated. She once believed she controlled the story. She believed that infidelity and humiliation would define me. She believed her choice validated her worth. She never imagined that her greatest act of betrayal would become the greatest catalyst of my life. She thought she wrote the end of our relationship. She did not realize she wrote the beginning of my evolution. Months passed, and she watched my transformation from a distance. I crossed paths with people who once sided with her, and their expressions changed when they saw me. They no longer looked at me with pity. They looked with recognition, as if my growth exposed their misjudgment. I never corrected them. I let silence do what explanations could not. Her reputation, once inflated by praise, now carried a different tone. People do not admire someone who trades loyalty for excitement. They do not respect someone who gambles stability for validation. Her friends no longer applauded her choices. They questioned them. Her lover, who once stood like a monument beside her, became a reminder of what she lost. His confidence evaporated the moment truth touched him. Without admiration, he had no identity. I never approached her. I never insulted her. I never sought vindication. Life did all of that without my involvement. The world does not stay blind forever. Truth moves slowly, but it arrives with precision. She began to understand that choices have echoes. Every decision she made returned carrying consequences she never expected. One evening, I encountered her unexpectedly. She froze, as if looking at a ghost of her own history. Her voice trembled while she attempted to speak. She asked how I moved forward so easily. I told her I did not move forward easily. I moved forward intentionally. Pain forced me to examine myself. Growth forced me to leave her memory behind. She thought she destroyed a boy. In reality, she built a man. She apologized, but apologies cannot resurrect respect. She asked if I ever loved her. I told her love without loyalty is a house without foundation. It stands until the first storm. She wanted closure. Closure is not something given. Closure is something earned. She had not earned it. She tried to explain her decisions, but explanations are currency without value when trust is gone. She asked if I wanted revenge. I smiled and told her revenge would mean she still mattered. She did not. What mattered was who I became in the aftermath of her departure. I did not want to hurt her. I wanted nothing from her. Indifference is not the opposite of love. It is the burial of it. Her eyes filled with a silence deeper than regret. She realized the truth. I never fought her lover. I never competed. I never needed to. She believed she left for someone better. She eventually understood she left someone she could never reach again. She walked away slowly, not defeated by me, but by her reflection. The world she tried to build on ego collapsed under the weight of consequence. She thought she staged a lesson for me. She did not know she enrolled herself in it. Some insults break boys. but they build men.